Our guest this episode is Zeke Camusio, CEO of Data Speaks, a serial entrepreneur with a background in economics, machine learning, and data science. He helps companies understand what drives sales and optimize marketing investments. His expertise has helped businesses improve campaign performance, maximize ROI, and make smarter marketing decisions. With 20 years of experience working with CEOs and CMOs, Zeke has a sharp eye for identifying what works and what doesn't, and how to adjust for better results. To break down what truly moves the needle in marketing, please welcome to the podcast, Zeke Camusio.
Welcome to the Engaging Personalities Podcast. I'm Anders Belanger, founder and CEO of Engagify, where we're on a mission to rehumanize business through engagement. We believe that we can all be more successful if we can command attention and deepen connection. So stick around to the end of the show and we'll reveal how you can be our next guest on a future episode. So let's get ready to engage.
Thank you, Anders. It's good to be here.
Awesome. So just before we started, we were just kind of chatting and attribution is such a, it's such a tricky thing, right? First of all, just who gets it? How do you do it? That sort of thing. Because everyone's kind of fighting over, from the trade show marketing side of things, people are fighting over, can we justify events, right? Like, we want the credit. Can you just kind of go into what's your take on attribution? Because, you hear different sides, whether it's multiple, single point, and how we make sense of that. Can we just kind of start there?
Yeah, of course. And, this is what I've been working on for the last decade, so I'm super excited to be sharing my what I learned and what I see companies struggle with, So I think it's important to know that there are two stats that really drive me crazy. One is that 87% of marketers believe that making data-driven decisions is key to success. The other one is that 13% of marketers trust the data they have, and that says so much about the state of marketing, where we, of course, want to spend our resources, our time, our energy, money on the right things. And, how do we know if we should do this or this, right? So I think it's important to know that in most cases, the journey a customer goes through is fairly complex, and it includes multiple touch points. Usually, across multiple devices. When it's online, if it's in person, it could be trade shows. So it could take somebody a trade show and a white paper download and a webinar before they want to talk to a sales rep, right? So I think it's important to know that you can't give a single point of attribution to each lead or deal. You actually have to understand and measure the impact of each one on the overall outcome. And that is, tricky to do. As you said, you have to really understand what are all the different factors that could influence a certain outcome. And then there's a process in machine learning that essentially we do to help understand those patterns. So if every time you have a trade show, your leads increase by 20% for like 2 weeks, and then 10% the week after that, 5% the week after that, then we have a pattern of what happens after you do a trade show. So the challenge comes with the fact that usually companies are doing A, B, C, D, and E, and then they have, leads or sales. And you have to understand the individual impact of each of the factors on the outcome. So yeah, I don't want to get too technical on the machine learning aspect of things, but you need a way to understand those patterns. You need to have a way to test those hypotheses with actual experiments. And that's essentially what allows you as a leader in your company to decide what initiatives are worth pursuing and which ones don't have the right return on investment.
Yeah. I mean, this really goes back to that, people need to see something 7 times before they even remember seeing it once, right? And those 7 times or multiple or more than that, can be distributed across so many channels and, how does this work? But I guess the fact that we're measuring that they were touched multiple times, and what were those touches, and all of that. But I can see how that complexity can really, well, it can be confusing for businesses trying to optimize the right channels and trying to do the right things. And you did say there too that, they need to, yeah, consume a white paper, do whatever they need to do before they want to talk to a salesperson, right? So that nurture, how long that takes and how many pieces and all of that. What you touched on the machine learning. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. We need something AI, machine learning, to start seeing the patterns. Is that really where this comes in? And are we on this kind of like verge of, good marketing data because of these new tools at our fingertips?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like saying that these are tools that have been around for a long, long time, and they're just becoming more. They used to be, available only to like enterprise companies, and now they're becoming more available and accessible to, smaller businesses. Um, so yeah, there's a couple of things, so machine learning is really, really good at finding patterns, so one of the things we do is we do randomized geographical segmentation. So essentially, let's say that you sell in the United States, you have, 50 states, you have marketing activities, and you say, we're going to do this campaign in Colorado and this other campaign in this other state. So by segmenting and exposing different markets to different activities, you can learn a lot about what is actually responding, because you see that, for example, for all the states, there's a certain trend, but for Colorado, where you add a new campaign, you see a lift on that. And that's really the most effective way to measure impact, is to look at incremental impact, which is different than, for example, if you run ads online, they're based on exposure, not actual impact. So what it means is that if you have, say, 100 leads per month, you start running uh, ads from, LinkedIn, and now you have, 120 leads per month. Okay, that's 20 additional leads. Even though like LinkedIn might tell you that, 50 people saw the ad. Sure, they saw the ad. They also, completed the form. It doesn't mean that the ad drove the new level of conversions. So that's how you want to measure, right? So this is the level things are at when there's an intervention, which is something new that you do to a given market that you don't do to the rest of the market. What is the lift that you get from that activity?
Yeah. Now, I guess helping all these companies doing what they're doing and looking at their data, what are the trends that you're seeing right now? Because things are always changing, and people want to know what works or what stopped working, and what have you. Do you have any insights currently right now of what's, moving the needle?
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's important to know that with every ad platform that's ever come out in the market, there's a um, kind of a journey they go through, So I remember, for example, with Google Ads, I used to get clicks for 1 cent, and then 5 cents, and then 10, and now it's really difficult to get any clicks for less than $2 or $3. And then Facebook became the affordable option, and then it became saturated with a lot of different advertisers, So TikTok is the new Facebook, we could say, where there's, still a lot of opportunity. But the key to all this is that at the end of the day, you really want to be where your market is at. So if you sell professional services, you don't want to be on TikTok. Most likely want to be on LinkedIn. And it has become, because advertising costs have increased so much in the last 10 years, it has become more important than ever to really get your numbers right, and you could get away 10 years ago with a highly suboptimal campaign, poor creatives, poor targeting, investing in all the wrong things, and still make the numbers work, because the cost of the traffic was so low. But now the traffic is, substantially higher, 3, 4 times higher than it was 10 years ago. You really need to know what you're doing, and that's where measurement comes, very, very, as a very important tool in that. because you want to know where the waste is and just move that money elsewhere. So yeah, and I think that that's the other thing is like in every market has become more saturated. Like standing out as a thought leader or an expert is not as easy as it used to be because now everybody has a platform. So I think that relationships matter more than ever. Quality content matters more than ever, and yeah, I think that going back to the basics is what I'm learning. It's working really well these days.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, everything's changing, and yet the foundational pieces still work. Is kind of what you're saying. Now, you talked about looking at the data, and my mind always goes back to trade shows, but there's always this kind of quality versus quantity kind
Mhm.
of I don't want to say argument or camps, but everyone wants lots of good quality leads. I think we can all agree on that. But if we're looking at lead generation, but how do we look at that quality ICP fit from your point of view? And like that's going to be a part of optimization too, because we can generate a bunch of leads that don't close, or we can generate how do you kind of like dig into the quality when you're looking at marketing data, Zeke?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's important to know that um, there's a time lag between the moment you receive a lead and the moment that could potentially become a paying client. That time could be 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. You never know. Um, so you can't wait to buy the right media to see what's happening. Are these people closing or not? Because you need to buy media today. You need to optimize based on the expected value of each lead that you receive. um, and because you don't know the value, right? Like how do you calculate the expected value? Well, there's a little bit of art and science to this, but you there's a lot of things that could be taken into account to figure out like who's going to be to score that lead when you receive it. So it could be, for example, if you notice that when you talk to a CEO, you have a 30% probability of closing a deal versus like somebody entry level is like 5%. That's one factor. Could also be company size, revenue. Um, there's really a lot, right? So even like qualitative questions, like that you can ask. So they describe the problem. AI does a really good job at taking that unstructured data and giving it a score. Just because it can understand things that with traditional programming you just couldn't do it. You had like maybe five options, you had to select one, but now we cannot ask open-ended questions and based on the input have AI score that lead for you based on what it knows your ideal customers are. Another really important aspect of this is if it were to close, how much would that lead be worth? So maybe in a certain vertical, you get leads that are or jobs that are twice as much revenue as a different vertical. So you have to take into account those two things: the probability that somebody that comes in will convert, and if they were to convert, what would be the expected value of getting them? So then you multiply both, and if you uh, a certain deal could potentially be worth 10,000 and you close 10% of those, that lead is 1,000. You can optimize your media buying today based on that expected value.
This reminds me a lot of I trade crypto and the trading systems and the expectancy of a system, right? Just like what is the size of the win and how often are you winning it, right? Because there can be difference. So it reminds me a lot of that. Now, talking about tools and measurement, I mean, you might have your own proprietary, stuff at your company, but what do you see out there that are, whether it's a CRM, whether it's an attribution tool? What are you seeing out there that you like and then you recommend?
For Are you asking about like anything that I find useful in my own daily life or like for any particular job?
Well, I mean, for measuring marketing and effectiveness, but I'm just like I don't want to get into like if you're like, well, I've got my own stuff, and
No,
it's
no,
like okay, we get that.
I'm
But if
happy to
there's
talk about it in general
publicly
terms.
available
Yeah,
things
yeah,
that
of
companies,
course.
whether it's HubSpot or
Yeah,
a Salesforce or different things out there or different plugins for those,
yeah.
yeah. What are you seeing that you really like that it's like it's helpful?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have a website, you definitely need Google Analytics. Every time you run ads, that platform will provide data. Um, so whether it's Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads, you're gonna get data from there. You certainly, if you're a service provider, lead gen, you need a CRM to get people in the system and track pipelines and stuff like that. So I really like HubSpot. I think it's a good tool. I personally use one called Pipedrive for as a CRM. Um, but yeah, I mean and the other thing is when you a customer data platform, which we offer that, but also you can use Segment, you can use Rudderstack. There's a lot of different good options. What that allows you to do is um, centralize data from different sources and different devices into a single customer journey. So you see that this person looked at the pricing page on your website on their mobile phone, and then they went on their desktop and opened this email that you sent. So when you're about to make a sales call, right, like it's useful to know that this person read this white paper and check the pricing page, and it gives you information about who it is that you're talking to. And yeah, of course, if you do advertising, you certainly, if you're spending, let's say, $25,000 or more per month, you certainly need an attribution platform to help you understand the impact of your different media. Um, but otherwise, with Google Analytics and a good CRM, you have the basics in place. Um, yeah, a customer data platform would be kind of the next addition if you're not spending much, but you still want to have a centralized view of the customer journey.
Yeah, Zeke, how do you handle looking at there's some of these kind of like I don't want to say you know like under the radar marketing that is happening, like whether people are talking about your company on their Slack or they're the kind of the word of mouth, the consuming of the content and that happening. How do you kind of capture the value of the content that people are consuming if there's no opt-in, if there's no and it's kind of not gated, if you will.
Yeah.
How do you get your mind around that, and how do companies handle that?
Yeah. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, we live in a complex world, and we won't be able to know uh, every single person what they influence their decision to buy from you or submit a form and become a lead. So I think that's there's some things that are easier to measure than others. And content is difficult to measure, because most people won't say that it's because I read this blog post that I, ended up, maybe they were following your blog for years, and that's the time they decided to contact you. But I think that the when it comes to content, what I think is most important is very low tech, which is to like ask people, when you talk to them, especially if you have if it's like lead gen, have a face to face or Zoom conversation with someone, you can ask him, have you read anything in our blog? Do you have any questions about how we work? And kind of gauge their interest level. If you notice that you most of the content that you put out is largely unnoticed, that's an indication that maybe you need to tweak your strategy a little bit. But if you hear that, oh yeah, I read this blog post or I found you on this podcast, yeah, I think that's where for content, just trying to understand when you talk to a prospect how they came to talk to you, that's really important.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you've worked with a lot of CEOs and CMOs over the years, and I'm wondering, are there some, common blind spots that they have, or I don't know, myths that they tend to cling to that when you work with them, you're like, okay, first off, straighten this out, right? What do you see when you work with people?
I think that because of the nature of the work we do is when there's this metric that advertising platforms use, return on ad spend, or ROAS. And that's essentially looking at the revenue they claim to have driven by the spend. The problem is that neither platform can know the actual revenue they're driving. They don't have access to your bank accounts, or e-commerce, or like CRM. They don't know that. Plus, they don't have access to all the other platforms and channel data. So they can only tell if somebody viewed an ad and then they purchased, but or submitted a contact form, but they don't know that you also clicked on these other ads from other platforms. The problem that I see with that is that because all these platforms are providing a ROAS number that is highly inaccurate, and sometimes it's too high or too low. The problem that I see is that it causes a false, an illusory sense of I know what return on investment I'm getting, which I think is sometimes is more damaging than saying I don't know. Because when you don't know, then you are much more likely to want to experiment. But when you think you know and that answer is incorrect, you end up investing in the channel that uh, you know claims to be doing best, rather than the one it's actually driving the results for you. So that's the one that I see that is the most
Yeah.
pervasive, where people want to be making decisions based on actual data, but the data they're using is just inaccurate.
Yeah. It's what you know that ain't so, right? That they got to be
Absolutely.
careful of. Yeah.
Mark Twain. Mark Twain.
Um, Interesting. Now, I have to ask this question because I know there's a lot of events people out there that we talk to, and they struggle to justify spend to their leadership, and I think marketing in general can kind of relate to that
Mhm.
thing. What advice would you have for people who are trying to, you know, get that budget to do whatever they're doing, to justify, that ROI. Is there something,
Yeah,
things that you
yeah.
could share?
So I think there are two different scenarios. One is where you have conclusive evidence that an investment you made in the past had a positive return on investment, and you can show the data and have that conversation. That's going to go really well for you. Um, the most common scenario, if you've never done that before, is that you don't have reliable data to provide. So in those scenarios, what I suggest is having a conversation about, um, based on what we've seen so far, this is a hypothesis we have and we like to test it. So for example, we last year we went to a trade show. One of the things I like doing at trade shows is to, when I'm exhibiting, get the purchase list of people that are going to be attending, and then qualify them and try to set up appointments with all of them. Um, so one of the things that you could do is say, if, for example, like last year we got 100 people to show up to our booth. We believe that if we do this campaign, we could be even sponsoring the trade show. And they send a newsletter to everybody who's going to be attending. That's going to have 200 people, still by the booth. So
Mhm.
you can, when you formulate a hypothesis, essentially you're acknowledging that you don't know, and you are saying that a certain activity will be measured by a given metric. In this case, by people stopping by our booth. And when somebody supports that initiative, they understand that you don't know, that you've never done it before, but that's how you're going to measure it. And I think it brings a lot of I think it makes people respect you, because you acknowledge that you never done it before, you don't know, but you are going to measure it, and you're going to you know worst case scenario, have a really valuable insight and know that you don't have to do it again next year. So that's the worst that could happen. So I think that framing it as an experiment is a very powerful way to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, because you need buy-in, because sometimes it's people are helping getting that data in there, right? You need to make sure that they're doing it. Like when I think about this, it's the
Yeah,
qualification on the scans, in a trade show, that
yeah,
sometimes it's kind of annoying to do that. But if worth getting good data, bad data is no good. So um, let's put on your futurist hat for a moment, Zeke, and say, like, what do you see, 5 years out, looking at marketing analytics and the pace that AI is accelerating innovation? What do you see happening, and what will we be able to do, in marketing teams in companies?
yeah. I think AI is changing the world at a pace comparable to what the internet did, 20 years ago. I I predict that in 5 years, the world we live in is going to be substantially different than our current world. I've never
Mhm.
seen any technology uh, grow at the pace that AI has been growing. And what I think it's going to mean for most of us is largely positive, right? Like it is going to bring a lot of, it's going to shake the way we do things, but I think in a very good way. I mean, I think when I think about what humans are good at and what um, machines are good at, which is like most of my, that's my life, right? Like I spend half of my day behind computers writing code, talking to data scientists, the other half having business meetings, So I see patterns in terms of machines that are very very effective at certain things that would take humans a long time. Humans are we understand strategy better. We see subtleties better. We understand why something that worked here is not going to work there. We like to do creative work. So that's what I see in the last 5 years, that anything that you have to do but you don't really enjoy, you can just ask an AI agent to do for you, and we'll be spending more time doing the things that actually are fulfilling.
That sounds nice.
I love
Sometimes
that.
the future, forecasts are kind of, could be dark, but that's, people doing more rewarding things, and leaning into their humanness, really, right?
Yeah.
Like, what makes us different, instead of having to, grind away doing monotonous data work or what have you. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
think just to offer one last example, I think that um I like thinking in terms of AI as enhancing humans rather than replacing them. So I'm writing copy for a new website now, and I'm still writing it. I'm still doing a lot of it, but I'm asking AI to, like, proofread it, or
Yeah.
just make some edits, maybe find a better way to word a sentence. I still know the story in a way that AI couldn't. It's just helping me get the right words in the right place and speeding up my process. So I think that's how I think about AI. It's we'll be able to delegate certain things 100%, but a lot of them, there's still going to be a human in the loop, and the AI, it's just going to make the process much more efficient.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. How can companies reach out to you if they, are listening to this episode and they go, "Man, I wish we could get our arms around our marketing data better and improve that ROI and all of that." How can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so if they want to learn about DataSpeaks, they can go to dataspeaks.ai. And if they want to get in touch with me personally, I think the best way is LinkedIn. So I'm sure we can put my LinkedIn in the show notes. And yeah, anytime you have a question, feel free to reach out. Happy to help.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Zeke, to help us kind of nerd out on marketing data here today. I learned a lot, and I kind of want to look at my own company data in a new way, just from maybe not trusting all of it. is one takeaway that I had, making sure that it's right. So, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your expertise.
Thank you, Anders.
All right, and to all of our listeners, thank you once again for tuning in. And until next time, you know what to do. Stay engaged.
Thank you so much for listening to Engaging Personalities. If you believe this world needs more engagement and you're an industry leader or you have an interesting take on rehumanizing business, go to go.engagify.ai/podcast-guest to apply and come on the show. If you got something out of this interview, do you mind sharing it on your social media? Just grab a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on the socials. If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show. Include the hashtag Engaging Personalities. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episode, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, engagify.ai, or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening and stay engaged.